Sandy, nice to speak to you. This is the first time we've caught up since you've obviously signed on again for next season. Just how are we feeling at the moment going into the summer?
Great, Ben. Daft as it sounds, with the different bits that are going on, and we'll try to kind of cover that and have try to get the kind of the story out to the Albion Rovers fans. Most importantly, just to see where we're going, where we're coming from, and how we're trying to kind of improve things and kick on. So good to see you. To be fair, it's been a few weeks. It's been a long few weeks since we last played. I watched your interview. Thought you did really well, which is telling the story, which is massively important, and it's great to come from a board member. So I think that's a start. We're on the right track. Where we are, I think you've explained it fairly well. But for me, I think you try to look at my time at Albion Rovers, which is just over 2 years now. The biggest hurdle we've ever, as a club, I think that the club's had to deal with is the relegation 2 years ago. I know there's not a lot of point in looking back the way and putting blame to anybody, but at that point in time, before the relegation, that's when things went belly up a little bit. Mistakes were made, and I'm not blaming anybody for it, and I'm not blaming Brian Reid for 1 second. I don't mean that, but there were decisions that had to be made that really weren't made previous to that. A little bit time back before the relegation situation happened, but it's happened, and it's an absolute kick in the teeth, as everybody knows. I look at other clubs who have been down the same pathway, like East Stirling, Cowdenbeath, Berwick, Brecon, ourselves. It's hard to get back out when you take that drop, and that's where we're finding ourselves now. I think when you look back since then, the 2 years in the lower league, mistakes have been made at every level, at board level, and with myself as well at times, that we looked at trying to get back up with a fairly decent budget, but in hindsight, East Kilbride have been so far ahead for 2 years that really it was a real challenge to try and get there. So we found ourselves at the end of last season in a financial position really where the club had to, for me, I would describe it as bottoming out. We are where we are. Hopefully now you've explained the situation to the fans, the low budget we're going to have next year, and we can't go any lower, and this is where it has to stop, and we need to try to kind of have a foundation and build on the next little bit as we go along, and learn from the mistakes in the past.
No, certainly. You mentioned obviously the club's been very upfront, I feel, about our situation, and obviously that's something that you're happy to work with. You kind of mentioned that bottoming out. I suppose it's now about trying to look forward and build on. Obviously this season's going to be difficult, but it's about taking those small incremental steps.
Yeah, it's right through the club. The bits, and it's easy. It's at board level, I think mistakes have been made. I think at in the football side, should we have made a better judgment, as I said? Should we really try to compete with East Kilbride? The bits that when you look at it, I've kept believing for the past year we're going to have an AstroTurf pitch out there. That's not came to fruition yet, and that really frustrates me, because I think that might well be the focal point where this club can kick on. I kept hearing, it's going to start, it's going to be done, it's going to be there soon, and we're still a good bit away from that, and that's a reality of it. But I think when that starts, that changes the whole structure of this football club and gives it a chance to progress. So that's number one for me, has to kind of happen. You look at, it's not just us, by the way, other teams in the Lowland League I think are in a very similar position financially to us, where life is difficult to try and get a decent budget. There's some teams in the Lowland League now who, Botherhead coming down obviously is a big blow to them, Clydebank coming up the way, there'll be two strong teams, I don't think there's any doubt about that, and you've got the normal guys challenging at the top end of the league who will be a force. So that'll be the strong parts of the Lowland League this year. It's going to be hard for us to compete at that level because of the budget, which is understandable, and it frustrates me a wee bit, because I felt the last, maybe since Christmas time, we've had a really good team out there, a really good bunch of players. The strength of the team was the group, I said that many a time, and I tried hard to look at. In fact, I worked out a budget that would maybe keep them all, and that included the players taking a wage drop to stay with us. But unfortunately, the club couldn't match that budget, and that's 100% fine. The club continuing is the most important thing. So it could have been great, but unfortunately, we have to go down a different route, and that's what we'll do, and that's what I'm now planning for.
Yeah, and just to go over your plans for the summer, as always, I'm sure you've been very much hard at work over the close season, and it is just about getting players in and building a squad to compete as well as we can.
Yeah, I've been in this position a lot of times over my football coaching managing career, so I know what it takes, and it basically it's like a rotating door where very soon I think I've got 20 odd players that are going to come in basically on trial. I get to know them, they get to know me and George, get to know the club, and then the selection process will go from there. Because of the budget, it's not going to be top class players, because obviously they go where the money is, and we've lost a lot of really good players to clubs who are in a better financial position, and that's fine. They're right to do that. The players, there's absolutely no reason for them not to do that. They look after themselves. So it's start again time. And I know what I'm doing with it, and it's not easy. It'll take a bit of time, but there's no reason why we can't get there. It took us 2 years to kind of build a group that I'm talking about from the end of last season, so it'll take a bit of time, but we've got the first batch, if that's the best way of putting it, coming in, and I'm sure that'll change a lot between now and the 26th of July when we play our first league game.
Yeah, it certainly helps you've got the experience, as you mentioned there, of kind of maybe going through this process. I mean, it is going to be, as you mentioned, difficult, but certainly you between yourself and George, you've got that experience of player recruitment and getting the right people in.
Yes, it's there's tons of footballers out there, and everybody, as a player, I keep saying to especially young footballers, everybody finds a level. What we will offer is not a great deal financially. What we will offer though is a platform in the lower league where, like Kai Patrick is a great example. He's going to League One from the base and working or playing for Albion Rovers, and we're giving them that platform to progress, and a lot of them will jump at that opportunity, mainly young players. We've managed to, I've actually got 4 players signed, which I know doesn't sound a lot, but at this moment in time I'm happy with that. I'm okay with it. I've got another 3 or 4 who I hope I get in the kind of budget range that we're talking about, and after that, that's when the new ones and fresh faces will come in, and we need to try and make the best that we can from that.
And it was mentioned as well when I did my interview, but certainly there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I suppose for football fans, sometimes you maybe don't see the kind of inner workings of a football club, but there's lots of things going in the background. Obviously the new cooperation system, for example, is just one thing, but the club's certainly exploring how we can get the best players in possible that we can for the upcoming season. Yeah,
the loan situation certainly changed, and I've been talking to clubs regarding that, and hopefully we'll make inroads into being successful with that. We normally do quite well with the loan situation, but you're right, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and that's so important. I think credit to the current board, including yourself, there is a transparency now. I think it's so important that everybody knows what's happening. I've had, as you know, been in some meetings with you guys which have been tasty to say the least. I'm trying to advise as in my football knowledge, and pass that information on, and I think it's coming to fruition in lots of different ways. The community trust and supporters trust are big time on board with the current board, and that's only a good thing. And just as I'm sitting here talking to you, our current board need help, they need bodies. I think there's so many different jobs, and you're all volunteers, so nobody gets any benefit from it apart from being attached to the club. So you need help with that, with numbers, and hopefully you'll get that maybe through the 2 trusts, somebody coming on board to kind of help, to split the workload to make us better. And I think that's, I've said continually, every club I've been at, if everybody pulls together and you're maximising your chance of doing the best you can, and I think with that little bit of push now from board level, we can go down that pathway. I know what I'm doing football wise, I know what the plan is, so the fans out there who are listening to this, you need to bear with us, you need to stick with us. There'll be some bad days, I've absolutely no doubt about that, we'll see some progress. I know that'll happen as well. And if the group are tight, and I mean everybody at the football club are tight and work together and stop all the tattle that's happened in the past and all the comments that people, I don't really understand where it comes from. It doesn't bother me in the least. Anybody that's given me stick, I honestly couldn't care less. I love working in football. I'm enjoying my time at Albion Rovers, and I wouldn't be sitting here, and I'm ready to have a go and try to kind of push us on as best we can.
You mentioned the supporters. What would be your kind of message for them? As you mentioned, obviously it's going to be a season that's going to be difficult, I'm sure, at points, but certainly the backing from the fans has been immense this time, and I'm sure that'll continue again.
I don't see that changing. I keep saying to players, we're sitting in the home dressing room here, I keep saying to players in this room, if you go out there onto the pitch and you give it your best shot, you try and you know everything you can to do the best you can, nobody can give you stick. You can be limited as ability wise, and that happens at the level we're at. You might not be the best team, and we won't be the best team. Hopefully we'll be far from being the worst team, but you give everything you can. I think our supporters will 100% get behind the team, and if that happens, good days and bad days, then you know that's us all pulling together, and that's what I would expect, and hopefully that's what we'll get.